Hey everyone, welcome back to Coding Mom. In previous tutorials, we have learned so many things like how you can build your chat agents, how you can stream response to front end, how you can talk with your PDF files, and how you can use vision LLMs, right? But all these things we have done is in Python programming language using the Python SDKs, right? But I think Python is not only language in which you can build generative AI applications. Nowadays, you can build generative AI application in JavaScript as well. And that's what we are going to learn in today's tutorial. We are going to get little advanced, and I want to use Lenggraph to build a generative AI application in JavaScript. So Lenggraph is a library for building stateful multi-agent LLM application. You can create agent and multi-agent workflows using Lenggraph, and it's a library provided by LangChain. Lenggraph is a very popular library when it comes to building agentic workflows. LinkedIn uses it, Uber uses it, GitLab uses it. So there are many players who is already using this in their production application. You can control flow of your LLM application using LangGraph. And that's we are going to learn in this tutorial. We are going to create a very simple front end which we can use to talk with our agent, and we are going to build a SQL agent. Basically, I should be able to have a conversation with my data source, which is a Postgres data source, right? So this tutorial might come into multiple parts, but at the end of the day, it's going to be very, very useful. And you will learn how you can create generative AI application in JavaScript in Next.js without touching Python. So let's get started. We are going to start with building a very simple UI using cursor, which we can use to talk with our agent. So let me create a Next.js application, fresh new Next.js project. So I'm going to create new Next.js application, and it's going to be TypeScript. I want to enable and going with all the basic default settings. All right, our application is created, and let me open up our newly created project. So we have backend and frontend from previous tutorials, and now we have this src library which is newly created. Let me create .env file. That's where we are going to store our OpenAI public key. And let me open up a cursor composer and ask to create a sample chat UI. Create a chat UI on home page of this Next.js AI app. Create mock API which responds with dummy answer as well, and integrate it with chat UI. So let's wait for a few minutes, and I think cursor will be creating a basic UI for us. I think we will need to use composer. We have just used this chat. So let me put that into composer. So what I'm going to do in Composer, just to give it a prompt, create a chat UI on home page of the Next.js AI app, create a mock API which responds with dummy answer as well, and integrate with the chat UI. So let's wait for a few minutes, I think, and it will create us whole project, and we'll be able to see some chatbot UI as well. So let's see how it goes. So it's generating chat page, and let's accept all these changes, right? Now let's run our application and see how is the UI. So I'm going to go on 3000, reload this application. Nice, we have some good UI. Hello, and it's giving us a response. Let me give some corrections. Input fonts are not visible. So it's going to fix that. I'm going to accept all these changes, and let's see. All right, I think it's visible now. So again, hello, and it's going to give us a response. So we have basic UI ready now, right? Now let's go to our API endpoint, which is route, and we have this endpoint available, right? And we are going to build our backend logic here only, right? But before we move on to that, let me create a new branch called 007 Lenggraph.js and commit this basic UI into our Git repository. So I'm going to root of the application and basic chat UI. All right, so these changes are committed now. Now what we are going to do is we are going to go to the agents, or you can say LangGraph tutorials, and we are going to create step by step all the files we need, right? So first step would be to install all the different dependencies. So I have listed down all the dependency we need to install. We need to install LangChain, LangChain community, LangChain OpenAI to communicate with OpenAI APIs, Lenggraph, type ORM for the database connection, and Postgres related plugins. So let me install all these plugins into our application. And it might take few minutes to install it. Let's go to this documentation, and we'll need to create basically a data source for our application, right? So let me copy this and come here under the source. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create new directory called utils and db.ts, and I'm going to put down this code and going to export this db. Now let me go to env local, and I'm not going to use SQLite database. I already have Postgres database in my local, so I'm going to use that only. So if I go to pgadmin, I already have this DVD rental database, which I'm going to use into this tutorial, and I'm going to specify all the default credentials. So in here also, I'm going to give type Postgres and take all the variables from environment. Let me see if our plugins are installed. It's not yet installed. It might take few minutes to do that. So let's keep on creating all the files we need. So we have now this database utils for creating a database connection. If we go to LangGraph documentation, we'll need to create some application or state as well. In LangGraph, you have nodes and edges, right? So if we go here, and if I show you how it works, so whenever we write any prompt into our chat, what it is going to do is it's going to first write a query, execute a query, and generate an answer, right? So these are the different nodes you can say, and each node is connected with some edges, right? So it's going to follow certain step-by-step process, right? And to follow that, we'll need to create some state. So let me define this state into here only. So I can create new directory called agent and state.ts, and let me check. All right, I think our dependencies are installed now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to export both of these states, export const. So this is the input state which accepts a question, and this is the output state. You can say it has a question, it has a query, it has a result of the query, and it has the answers, right? So this we are going to use when we are going to build our graph, or you can say Lenggraph, right? So our state is ready. Let me check why it is. All right, I can directly give 5432 here. Don't need to specify in our environment variable. Now let me go to documentation again, and now it comes to build some LLM related service. So if I go here, I'm going to create again services and LLM or you can say OpenAI.ts, and import chat OpenAI from OpenAI. I'm going to use GPT-4o model, going to use temperature is equal to 0.2 and export this OpenAI. I think it's going to be like this. So now we have our OpenAI service ready. Let me go to create this prompt and let me copy this prompt. Let me explain what it is doing as well. So prompt.ts, and let me tell you one thing. So what it does is, we in LangChain Hub, we have certain pre-built prompts ready, right? So this is a chat prompt template, and we are going to use SQL query system prompt, which is already into LangChain Hub. So it looks something like this. Given the input questions, create synthetically correct PostgreSQL to run help the find answer. And we are going to provide table info as well as our query. So this is the prompt which is already part of LangChain Hub and that we are going to use, right? So I'm going to convert this into function, convert to function, and I'm going to use that, okay? And I'm going to export this function as well. Now, next step is to write basically a query from our question, right? So let me first copy this and create a function here called writeQuery and explain you what it is. So the output type will be a query, which is synthetically correct query. To validate that, we are going to use Zod. Now we already have this query prompt template, right, which we have created. So that prompt we are going to use when we invoke our LLM, right? We are going to specify our data source. And why we need to specify data source? Because whenever we want to create a query, we'll need to give LLM an information about our database. So it's going to accept different database table schema and it will understand our database, and based on that it will create a query. And what it is going to input is a state.question. So we have created this Lenggraph state, and it is going to use this variable as an input, right? And once we have this prompt built, we are going to give this prompt to our LLM and we are going to get the result in form of query. So let me import our OpenAI service, DB service, and prompt and state. So we are going to use OpenAI here, and we are using this our function and query prompt template. We'll also need to use our data source. So const data source is equal to db. I think this should be enough, and let me use this here, and I think we are fine now. And we are going to export this writeQuery. So again, what it is doing is, we are going to use this query prompt template from LangChain Hub. We are going to connect with our database. We are going to invoke this query prompt template using the database table info and the question, and it is going to give us a final prompt value, right? Which will look something like this. So if you want to print that, we can do that. Console.log prompt value, and that we are going to see. And again, we are going to provide this prompt value to our OpenAI LLM, and then it will give us a query. So let's go to our endpoint, and instead of now mocking responses, what we are going to do is, we are going to provide actual response. So let me create a response writeQuery and import it. So let's run this, and going to assistant, list top 10 titles, and let's see what it does. If we go here, it says internal server error. So let's see what's an issue. So we have provided incorrect API key. Let me add correct API key. So I have added correct OpenAI API key, and let me try again. And it says objects are not valid as a React child. So let me see here what was the response. So I think we got the response, query is being built, right? But I think front end was expecting another format of response. So let me check that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write response is equal to response dot query. Let me try again. List top 10 titles, and it should give us again that query. And we have that query now. So if I do this query on top of film table, I should be able to get top films. All right, we have this top film, right? So far what we have done is we have created an application which accepts natural language as an input and writes a SQL query based on our database, right? So I'm going to post this video now, and we are going to meet in the next video where I'm going to show how you can convert this SQL result into natural language output and how we can use Lenggraph to do that, right? So I think this is good for now. If you have any question, please feel free to comment down into comment section. And if you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe, like this video and hit the bell icon. Thank you so much.